everyone, and welcome back. I'm Tim Green. I'm the features editor of the MEF, and I'm your moderator for this session, which is titled Creating Seamless Customer Experiences with Multi-Channel Orchestration. So I'm going to kick off with a James Brown quote, always a good way to start a session, I think. He's saying, "I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open the door, I'll get it myself." And he was a lot funkier when he said it, but I think even the godfather of soul knew that people love to self-serve. And a study by Salesforce, much less funky, said that the average customer uses 10 different channels to communicate with companies. So brands should take heed. The conversational future will be all about self-service, and it won't be on one platform, but on many. So the question is, how do brands cover all those bases? And to discuss this, I'm joined by a fantastic panel. Mathias Muehlfelder, who's the Senior Director of Product Management at Syniverse. Mathias, wave. Thank you very much. Douglas Orr, who's the CEO and founder of NovaStone. Hi, Douglas. Jeff Back, who's the Vice President of Product Management at Syniverse. And in his car, and not with us yet, is Anthony Flack, who's the Head of Digital Delivery at Santander UK. But he'll be dropping in as soon as he's in front of a PC, providing his wife drives well enough to get him home safely. So before we've got about an hour to discuss this topic, and I'm hoping that you'll ask plenty of questions out there, and we'll get to those at the end. To set the scene and kick us off, I'd like to hand back to Jeff, and he's going to give us a short presentation, and then we'll kick off the discussion. So over to you, Jeff.
Great, Tim. Thanks. I'm going to share my screen here. See if I can get the right slide up. Give me a second. Unfortunately, I don't have a cool rock star quote to kick things off with, but you can hear me, right, Tim? Can you hear me, Tim?
We can hear you, Jeff.
I think everything's fine, yeah.
Good, good, good. Sorry about that. Okay. So we thought it'd be a good idea to kick the discussion off. Probably, I think the best way that we could do that and provide, good context for the conversation would be to talk a little bit about, what we do at Syniverse, because, CPASS and orchestrated solutions is what we're all about. So I figured it'd be good to, set the stage with a little bit of an overview of what we do, and then how we look at the market and how it's evolving. And we have some interesting, I think, and probably thought-provoking observations on how we think the market's evolving over time, right? So, the foundation, as we all know, of CPASS is really, it all started with A2P SMS, and that remains the foundation of CPASS, frankly, right? So, it all started here. Mobile customer engagement all started down here in the left-hand corner, right? And at Syniverse, we believe very strongly that it's important that that's built on a foundation of a network and platform and direct relationships with operators around the world. So there really is no middleman, between you and your end users, or at least you minimize that as much as possible. That's the best possible quality you can get. So we really believe strongly that, that kind of carrier ecosystem credentials and network and reach is very important there, and that's the foundation that you build off of, right? And then, but as we all know, then you expand out, and customers are increasingly looking for the ability to communicate with key companies they deal with and brands across other channels that are starting to emerge, right? So we all know the social messaging channels are increasingly becoming important. Out in Asia in particular, like WeChat and Line is very, very popular, and you get really extensive reach with those channels, and increasingly end users would like to actually start using them to communicate with companies and brands, versus having to call them and talk to them over the phone. And of course, then the companies and brands are also very interested in opening up those communications over those lines. So they're very important channels to have in the portfolio within your CPASS offering. There's other important channels: voice to text conversion. I'm sorry, text to voice conversion, push of messages into an app that you may have that your customers use routinely. There's even capabilities where you can push discount coupons and things into mobile wallets, etc. There's a number of use cases where that's quite popular. And of course, the next generation and the evolution of really kind of native inherent messaging in your phone, a la SMS and MMS, which is coming and starting to get to the point where it's going to hit critical mass here, is RCS, Rich Communication Service, right? So, so the foundation now of CPASS is not just SMS and MMS, but a whole portfolio of different channel options that you can use to communicate to your customers, and that's going to be an ever expanding set of capabilities, right? Now, on top of that, CPASS is not just about the channels; it's also about capabilities that can add value and help make your mobile engagement with your end users more efficient, more secure. And so at Syniverse, we focus very much on also adding capabilities that allow our customers to be able to verify phone numbers, as a for instance, do multi-factor authentication in a turnkey way, manage consent, detect the possibility of IMSI swap fraud, in particular interesting for the financial services vertical, of which we have some good guests today for this webinar. So it's not just about channels; it's also about capabilities that you can add value. And a lot of these channels are asynchronous that we're focused on here, but there's also a lot to be added for kind of conversational applications, a two-way chat, very interactive capability. Of course, a chatbot development. I think we have a guest who's worked on the development of a chatbot, which actually, in an RCS environment, will become the norm. All communications from enterprises and brands will come through chatbots on the RCS side. There's kind of synchronous channels that you want to use, and the asynchronous ones down at the bottom. And then finally, you got to wrap that all up with good analytics and reporting, and allow a lot of customization for the enterprise to be able to understand how their mobile engagement their mobile engagements are working and how effective they are, right? Now, what I'm showing right now, though, is really at its core, this is CPASS, right? CPASS is the first generation or first couple generations of CPASS is really the presentation of a library of capabilities, both channel communications capabilities, as well as identity verification, et cetera, that users can program to and use in their own applications, okay? Now, quite often in this early stages, they're using these on a one-off basis, either sending line messages or sending SMSs or doing phone number verification in isolation, right? But now we're seeing the market evolve, right? and the demand evolve to where enterprises want to start to weave these capabilities together in more complex and value-added ways, so that they can potentially, do a number of steps in serial or even some in parallel. As a for instance, maybe before you send a one-time password down, say through WeChat to an end user to verify themselves, you may want to do an IMSI swap detection check to make sure that that IMSI has not been swapped out in the last year. If it has been, and it's been recently swapped out, you may actually choose to reroute that to a voice call and actually talk to that end user to make sure that that end user is the person you think is holding that mobile device, as a for instance. So this is where orchestration, the ability to weave these together in an intelligent way in a workflow, really can start to enhance that mobile customer experience. And we're seeing increasing demand for that. So we've added an orchestration engine to our portfolio. Another key element of doing orchestrated solutions, and what customers, well, the enterprise customers are asking for, is they want these to not, these mobile engagement solutions to not sit in isolation, but rather to be able to plug and play with how they do business today. And so it's imperative as part of working on orchestrated solutions for enterprises that you have a vast library of pre-built connectors and integrations to some of the key systems, the SaaS platforms that enterprises are using today to manage their business, like a CRM, like Salesforce, Marketo for marketing, things like that, Oracle for HR, and have the ability to have the mobile engagement solution that you're doing through orchestration both be informed by and informed back to those other key business systems, so that, like I said, you can plug and play that solution into how you do business, and it fits very nicely, right? And along with that, more and more now customers are asking for some consulting and kind of professional services is another key element of starting to do intelligent engagement the way enterprises are looking to do it. Okay. Now, in terms of where the market's going and kind of Syniverse's strategy, right, is we look at it with the kind of familiar technology adoption curve, right, where you have the early tail, the innovators, and then you have the early adopters, and we see that as what's going on in CPASS as well, right? So those early adopters and innovators are what we call digital natives, right? They are the OTTs, the over-the-top players, the tech guys, even some companies that have frankly created their own industries, the sharing economy and Uber and Lyft, et cetera, right? These guys are coders at heart. They are creating the application themselves. And so they wouldn't have it any other way. They want to be able to code to the APIs themselves. And so they kind of self-create the customer experience, and they do it themselves, right? They don't need help. But what we're seeing now, and just one last note, Twilio, obviously that is the market that Twilio has done very well in. They went and spent a lot of money on winning developers' mind share to be top of mind for the kind of do-it-yourselfer companies that are creating applications, right? We see now the market moving into more the majority along the technology adoption curve, and it's moving more towards the bricks and mortar enterprises that are, they're frankly, they're confronted with the fact that they have to digitally transform their business, and they're not necessarily coders at heart. They manage, their businesses, and they manage the systems they've always managed their businesses with. But now that they have to elevate the mobile engagement experience with their end users, of course, accelerated, and demand has been accelerated by COVID. they need help, and they're asking for help, and that's the kind of relationship we have with a lot of our key customers, more the brick and mortar, the financial services and banking industry, hospitality, et cetera, where they want help, and they're looking for partners to help them figure out not only how to code to APIs, but then start to think about more advanced customer experiences that they can create through orchestration and things like that. Because for better or worse, the digital natives have trained mobile end users to have a very compelling and useful experience through their mobile devices. And so they've raised the bar. So not only are digital adopters confronting their own digital transformation and aren't coders at heart, but the bar has been raised in terms of what that experience should be. So that's how we service. We're more of a co-creation partner working with bricks and mortar enterprises to help them envision the art of the possible, what can be done. And we kind of support them in with a white glove kind of approach. And we really kind of work our way to where they trust us, and we work side by side with them and become kind of a customer experience, mobile customer experience co-creation partner. And so that's one go-to-market that we pursue. It's direct with the bricks and mortar companies. The other interesting one is that, all these enterprise resource platforms, SaaS platforms, they're realizing that the value of building mobile engagement capabilities and messaging into their platforms. So the second area that we focus on is working with those companies to embed messaging capabilities and mobile engagement capabilities behind whatever they're presenting to their customers. So as an example, Salesforce has created a campaign management module inside Salesforce where you can design, manage, you've got all the information at your fingertips in terms of the reach numbers and demographics of the people you're trying to reach out to. You design the engagement and you launch it from within Salesforce. We're working to be behind that button where you say, launch campaign. We're working to be behind that button with a lot of these players to actually do the heavy lifting of launching those messages, and in a lot of cases doing it in an intelligent way where we can try a preferred channel. If that channel fails, we can fall back to other channels as just another example of some intelligence we can add with orchestration behind these SaaS players. So hopefully that gives some good context to the discussion. And I guess I'll hand it back to you, Tim, to kind of take us from here.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeff, for the overview. I'm gonna, you raised some interesting points there. So the whole, the idea of this, these solutions being adopted by legacy companies is interesting. So Matthias, maybe I can come to you. What kind of organizations are you starting to work with now? And in terms of some of these integrations with SaaS channels, what kind of use cases have you seen there?
So, I mean, we, as Jeff also pointed out, right, we are working with multiple companies, but where we really see an upcoming trend now is in the brick and mortar businesses, if you want to call it like this, right? So not the digital innovators, not the Jeff, how did you call it? Coders at heart, right? So it's the banks, which come along and basically need help in order to roll out the digital campaigns and all of these things. So meaning where we see really a lot of demand right now, especially probably also because of this unfortunate situation the world is currently in, all of this digital transformation strategies are basically pushing out and are really becoming very hot. And but they become hot for kind of everybody out there. Where Syniverse is again concentrating on is we are helping the brands, the enterprises out there who need co-creation support in order to build their digital transformation strategies, right? So not the one who develops it. Certainly they can do it with our platforms, but where we really concentrate on is we help those ones who need help we support, I should better say probably, who need help and support in their digital transformation journeys, who need to integrate with other systems out there and so on. And that's basically also probably coming into the second part of your question. The most use cases right now is basically integrating these messaging solutions and CPASS solutions with call it CRM systems, right? Home built CRM systems, but also big SaaS platforms out there, like for example a Salesforce, right? Why is that important? Just think about Tim is texting, you know, his supplier XYZ. This supplier does not necessarily recognize your phone number immediately, but if you cross-connected at the back end with the CRM system like Salesforce, now I know it's Tim Green, right? And now I know he just recently bought something or had an issue or whatever. And that certainly, you know, helps a lot in order to drive the conversation in a different way. But also if you put it together with chatbots and so on, if you take the information, what you basically as a chatbot also ping pong back and forth with the consumer and feed it back into, let's say, a Salesforce again as a CRM example, then everybody benefits from that conversation because everybody afterwards coming in can absolutely see, you know, what was the conversation, what did the customer say, what did the customer want, etc. So CRM, I think, to cut it short, is pretty much top of mind, but it's really, you know, every company has a little bit of different challenges and different integration points, but CRM is one of the top ones, absolutely. Okay,
so Matthias has talked about banking there, which is rather convenient segue to introducing Douglas. So Douglas, you're, you know, helping a lot of fintech and banking companies with messaging solutions. So why don't you tell us a little bit about NovaStone and then give us an insight into the kind of work you're doing?
Yeah, so NovaStone is helping high-end service organizations like banks, insurance, legal services make the secular shift away from the world of correspondence that I grew up with, fax machines, email, paper, to a world that is increasingly centered around messaging. And the type of service that we do, which differentiates ourselves from Syniverse, is really about named relationships. You have a banker, you have a lawyer, you have somebody who you have more than a 5-minute relationship with. And these are the use cases for us that we excel in. We work with some of the world's biggest banks in solving these problems. We have some of the same endpoints such as Syniverse going into the WhatsApps and the WeChats, for example, in the world. But then we also go deep in the organization, you know, and increasingly we're being asked to, can you bridge our internal development team on Slack or people on Teams who want to talk to the outside world via WhatsApp, but they can't do it via Teams and particularly. And so anyway, this is a you know, hugely exciting world, and you know, when we work with us, it's a two-stage story. There's first of all just enabling the connection between prospects and clients and customers with these named support people, and then the second phase is taking the legacy software, whether it's workflows or transactions, etc., and giving them a framework so that you can do these transactions entirely, don't have to, but entirely within a messaging environment, if that is the way that you get more trading done with your client in a safe, orchestrated manner. But that's NovaStone in a nutshell.
Okay, and Anthony, it's good to have you here. Congratulations on your safe return. So you guys, so Santander, obviously a huge international bank, and you've launched a bot and a conversational messaging platform in the UK. Why don't you tell us how that came about and what kind of results you've seen?
Yeah, okay, thank you. The original thought behind it was really to take pressure out of the call centers, but also to improve user experience at the same time. So it's almost a perfect project in that respect. So it's not just a cost play, it's a service play, because you can give far better service through automation if you do the automation well. and that automation can be, through the bot or through what we call secure dialogues. So using an orchestrated journey in the bot through to an API. So, completing a transaction essentially, through automation. We started it in the call centers, and that's an interesting place to start, because there are people who've spent years planning and running analog, managing calls, forecasting calls, and it's quite a difficult place to start. But we started there because it's secure. And what I mean by secure is essentially the first cohort of customers we went to only access chat via logging on, and whether they log on to the online bank or log on through the mobile bank, they then get a chat invite. But we know they're authenticators at the highest level. So we were offering quite a full service through that type of bot, and then handing off if the bot can't handle it to a live agent. So we had live agent bot, and then if we were out of hours, because it was only in call center hours, we had asynchronous messaging. So customers would leave a message and a colleague could come back to them afterwards. So we had all three things running. What then happened, COVID came along, and it completely changed what we were doing. We had a lot of pressure on the branch network. We had to close branches or reduce hours. We had customers not going in to the branches, which was putting pressure on the call centers. So we very quickly flipped what I call public chat. So we went to an unauthenticated chat on the public website with a bot that was very hastily put together content-wise, so more like a Q&A, FAQ type bot, with a very handy, low-friction handover to thousands of colleagues sat in the branches. So we had dormant staff who weren't serving customers in branches anymore, who were able to answer queries. But because it wasn't authenticated, they clearly couldn't do more risky types of transactions. So then steadily we built up the portfolio of things they could do, and we cannibalized a PCI type form. So we have partial authentication through public. Now that's left us in a slightly tricky place now, because my preference with public would have been for it to be more FAQ, Q&A. And if you do go through to a live agent, it's really to drive digital adoption. So we'll help you out once this way, but please register for the app, please download the app, please go on the online bank, and next time self-serve. So that's a quick crash course on what we've done in the past 7 months.
And what kind of volumes have you seen on the login version and the open version?
Okay, I'll get my numbers right. So pre-March, we were in pilot mode with 40 or 50 agents working 8 till 6, and we were hitting it just through the online bank, in fact. So it was a controlled pilot. We were getting 2,500, 3,000 a day, so very small fry. As soon as we flipped it across to public, we were hitting 32, 33,000 a day. And it's settled back down now to about 24, 25. And the split public to secure, I haven't got my numbers in front of me, is something like 2 to 1 in favor of public.
Right. It's interesting you say that you're still trying to migrate them over to other channels rather than keeping them in that messaging platform.
No, not trying to. Containment is the key measure. But if it's Q&A, it's pretty straightforward. What time does Lewisham branch close? 9 o'clock. The bot should be able to handle it. You are going to get more complex transactions, which are more difficult for a bot to handle. So, we aim for a containment of about 60 to 70%. Right. We update content every day based on quality reports. We don't. The handoff in contingency during COVID was just to make sure the customer was served. So therefore, contingent good service was more important than cost, which is quite right. And to an extent, customer experience, it was just opening another door to the customer. And proved successful because we managed to serve a lot of people who would have sat in an IVR otherwise. Moving forward, that's not really quite how we want to do it. We need to be more selective about how we do it, as opposed to, I won't say not service focused, because user experience is key. And the kind of elixir really is to work out when your user experience is good enough in the chatbot to confidently put it as your first point of contact. And we're not quite there yet. I think we're a few months off that. But until you're totally confident, you can't put something out and say this is the only place you can go if it's not brilliant.
And back to you, Douglas. Have you have any of your clients had a similar kind of rollout to Santander and learned some of the lessons? Are any of them sort of totally committed now to bot interactions as a first port of call for their customers?
Yeah, I mean, there's one corporate bank where it started off as a pilot. Now it's going into production, but they were originally, and this is pre-COVID, trying to deal with the spoofing, getting rid of email because it's just a not safe media. And they rolled out a pilot with us, and they got a 90% shift by corporate clients. We're talking about people in treasury teams and people in amusement parks as bookkeepers. And we got the bank, which we were working with, saw this 90% shift. They saw a 50% drop in phone calls. Because why would I want to play telephone tag if I can just send a message to John saying, what's the answer to this question I have? And then the second leg of that, which happened at another bank, was this desire to work through WhatsApp, because we know what's happened during COVID. People are sitting at home. I'm sitting at home. Well, my clients are sitting at home. And we're using messaging more than ever before. And because we're human, we like to have a closer connection than a piece of correspondence. So we've with another one of our clients, we developed a system whereby the primary engagement is via WhatsApp through a WhatsApp business account to your banker. And you say, dear banker, I want to buy more Tesla shares. The price has dropped. I want to buy some Tesla shares. And we facilitate this so that they're given a link that takes them to a safe place inside the bank's app, which is secure, multi-factor authentication, all that stuff. And they complete the trade. So that's like one click from WhatsApp into the bank's app and one click back into WhatsApp again. And this is super nice because from the client's perspective, because they're rich and time poor and they hate callbacks, they want to just get this Tesla share transaction completed. And the bank wants to do that, they really do, but they need to have it in a space where they're fully confident that they can take this order for 100,000 without having to call back the client. So anyway, these are we live in a world of accelerated change. The people around this panel, I think we're all experiencing it. I guess we're a bit like blind men touching different legs of the elephant, but you know, it is one bloody big elephant, and I'm excited by the innovation.
Jeff, back to you. How much interest are you getting now from these big legacy businesses? Are they coming to you because they're aware of this opportunity? Do you have to sell it to them to a certain extent?
Most of the time, no, we do not have to sell it to them. So we have a pretty extensive portfolio of clients. In the U.S., I think we have the top 9 out of 10 banks that we work with, and a huge global chain, a hotel chain, etc. Big logistics company. With all of them, we started. It's kind of like you got to get in there, so you win an RFP to at the time to do A2P messaging, but then the last 2 years, we've been talking to them about CPASS, talking about where the market's going, talking about the capabilities that we have, and we're right there with where the market's going. So even though they add use cases and use cases and use cases with us that are just text, they understand and agree with where the market's going. And especially through COVID, they're seeing their customers starting to demand it. And they, like I said, they've been trained by the digital natives and the over-the-top guys. So they feel, even though we're doing a lot of A2P SMS, they feel future-proofed working with us. And I can tell you that this year really has been the turning point in terms of talking about other channels. Just talked to a customer yesterday out in Asia about Line for Thailand. And they're also talking about doing these more advanced capabilities. They want to be more intelligent. They want to have an omni-channel discussion with their customers as opposed to a multi-channel, right? And what's the difference? Well, the difference is that in omni-channel, it's coordinated. It's one conversation, no matter what channel it's happening over, right? So the origin of omni-channel really started with the web, right? And online retail and e-commerce, right? And you ordering something from a e-commerce site, getting it, you don't like it, you want to go return it, you go to the bricks and mortar store, and they say, no, you can't return it here. We don't interact with that. You got to go return it on the online store. That is not omni-channel. That is the opposite. That's multi-channel. So we're starting to see a lot of demand for true omni-channel, where we can coordinate the conversation across multiple channels. The last thing you want to do is be having a very terse and hard conversation with a customer who's very upset over WhatsApp, and then go send them email promotion, or send them a text to say, hey, sign up for this, right? That's poor timing, and it makes you sound like you're disconnected, and you are. What we want to do is, and it can be done either in the chatbot, as Anthony said, some of that intelligence can be built there, or the intelligence can be built, kind of on our side with orchestration and all that, and we can maintain the conversational context. And it also can be a sum of both, right? Which is Anthony's chatbot covers a certain scope of channels, but he wants to make sure that he stays a contextual conversation across some of the other ones that he doesn't have integrated into his chatbot. We can also help there with orchestration and connect to those other channels, and then somehow working with Anthony, pull the whole thing together so he now has an omni-channel conversation across all of his channels.
Okay, so Matthias, so Jeff just talked about the different channels. What are those different channels, and how, in terms of a brand onboarding and enabling this omni-channel solution, what's the process like? How long does it take? How quickly can they seamlessly integrate those different channels together?
That's an interesting question. And I saw different scenarios. Some are extremely fast, and others take a little bit longer, right? It depends on the organization and so on as well. How to explain it? Think about CPASS as your API sender, right? And one of the big benefits in CPASS at all is that you use one API, and this one API, which you use for, let's say, standard text messages, SMS, can be used in almost the same way to also communicate via Facebook Messenger or via WhatsApp or via WeChat, or even to send a push notification or something like that, right? So it's really just nuances in the API call you need to change. So therefore, if somebody comes and says, I now start with SMS, it's really very, very simple that they also can add additional channels. Now, companies make specific choices, which channels they want to go first with, and then with second, and they think about their rollout strategies. But I saw companies who did that very, I don't want to say carefully, but who did that really step by step, and it took them about 3, 4, 5 months even in order to roll out to 5, 6 or more channels. But we also had other customers who basically, just turned on the channels almost instantly, all of them. And once they launched, within another 2 weeks or so, another sprint later, to speak about tech terms and dev terms here, another sprint later, they added another 5 channels. I think what probably also answers your question in a good way is, you need to take into consideration your consumer base, your geolocation, etc. Right? So when Facebook Messenger is very, very popular in the US, then they might start with that first and see and figure out, how it all goes and how it all works. In other parts of the world, they start with WhatsApp and are not so fancy about the Facebook Messengers. And then if you go even to the Asia, then Facebook and WhatsApp doesn't play a role. You start with WeChat, and that's all you need, because that's what everybody's using, right? So it's multifaceted, but it can be extremely quick. I think that's one of the key advantages you have in a holistic CPASS solution.
Yeah, and one of the angles I'd like to add to what Matthias said was that it's also dependent on the use case, right? So he mentioned that channels are popular in different regions, etc., but also use cases. So you see WhatsApp and the social messaging apps being very popular for two-way kind of customer service types of use cases because they lend themselves to that. You know, that's what people are used to. They're having conversations with people. They like to have that conversation with the brand directly. So it's a lot about use cases too. We know other use cases like one-time password. That's really just a one-way thing, and that's not something that, you know, probably it's better served by text.
But just maybe to add one thing, just right quick, because Jeff, you know, we talked internally about it, but I think it's really interesting. Even if we send one-time passwords, right, you cannot imagine how many people reply back and just say thank you. I mean, it's like, you know, we are probably laughing a bit about it, but it's people are conversational, right? So, and even if they get just a one-time password, but they are so happy they can go back to the whatever Gmail accounts of this world or so. Thank you. You know, it's pretty interesting if you read the MOs. It's stunning.
Well, politeness costs nothing, Matthias. We all
Yeah,
know
exactly.
that. That's what our mothers taught us. Douglas, what do you think about different channels? You talked before about WhatsApp and how that's evolving. So what's your feeling on when you're talking to your clients about the channels they should be supporting?
Well, I think Matthias was already talking about it. You have to be driven by the clients, and it's not the days when the corporates really get to choose how you work with your clients. Your clients define how that experience is going to be, as per the first graph that we saw showing, or the second graph from Jeff. And you know, and this is what the banks are having to, banks are big. I love them, but they're really big and slow, and they are slow to adopt this stuff. And it takes a crisis like COVID to suddenly move mountains in a day, as Anthony has shared his story with at Santander. And we're seeing this in all, well, basically across the board. We've had projects that have literally taken years. And suddenly in May, they call us up and said, why are we not live yet? Well, I could tell you about why we're not live, but suddenly it's like, okay, now we got to go live because the C-suite want us to go live. So it's moved from being, you know, client engagement through messaging has gone from like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to do that, to actually this is a necessity. And you know, we're glad to have, you know, we're not a Syniverse. We have our own niche to play in that world, but it has been an exciting couple of months from my home office here.
Well, I've already quoted James Brown, and there's a Lenin quote that's going around a lot at the moment where I can't remember the exact quote, but it's along the lines of nothing happens for 10 years and then everything happens in a week. And I think that's what we're seeing at the moment. So Anthony, as one of these big and slow moving banks that Douglas has described, can you tell us something, give us a bit of an insight into the way how you built your app? How you built your chatbot? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Just to go back on that point, I agree. I mean, I was smiling at Mathias's comment about the multi-channel orchestration. We certainly didn't do multi-channel orchestration in 5 months. Not a chance. You know, it took us probably that long to integrate the SDK. But anyway, that's a different story. Kind of turning it around slightly with our roadmap when we were piloting on Secure included WhatsApp messaging and Apple Business Chat to be incorporated pretty quickly, and also what I call IVR deflection, so deflecting someone from IVR to messaging. Now those 3 things were delayed by COVID because it was all hands to the pump to actually get the public service running, and we're only just more or less stable enough now. And I'm not going to look to my right screen, but I'm hoping Apple Business Chat's about to go live fairly soon, and WhatsApp before the end of the year. In terms of how we built our chatbot, I think it's probably fairly typical. We've only recently merged our innovation and digital teams to be one, but you know, a couple of years ago we had an innovation team working, you know, on pilots and proof of concepts, and they worked with Google and built an in-house chatbot, which is actually, you know, using Google Dialogflow. We toyed with Watson, couldn't really see any big advantage with one or the other. And the bot itself, and no disrespect to all my engineers, isn't the most complex thing at all. But once the bot was built, it's proved quite stable. But content is king. Content experience is king. So we started with a secure bot as a pilot. That secure bot has stayed the test of time and is still part of the portfolio of bots. We have multiple bots, but all subsequent bots we've built out using a third-party supplier we partnered with. So, you know, when I said we put the public bot live in less than 72 hours, that's, you know, that's true. The actual technical construct of the bot itself is almost out of the box. You know, how you design the dialogue and how you put the content in is where there was far more effort. Now, where we are now is we're actually within this platform thinking of having multiple bots almost by topic, rather than having one big amorphous knowledge base, which is more difficult to interrogate. And, you know, the customer has no idea there's multiple bots, and in fact the colleagues have no idea there's multiple bots. But it's a more efficient way of managing that content and providing a quicker, more accurate service.
What have you learned about bots in terms of dialogue flows, and what works, what doesn't, what mistakes are made, and so
on? Well, it's more about linguistics. Yeah, it's not technology. One which always made me smile was the word close and close in English. And I mentioned Lewisham branch a minute ago, but on one of our first secure dialogues, so going through to, it was originally to an RPA, but then quite quickly afterwards to an API. It was for account closures. Now, account closures sound quite negative, but when you've got 16 million customers, closing the account, you need to make a good experience, because there's a good chance the customers have got many other products with you. So it's not like in a telecom, with all due respect, we'd make it difficult to close an account. We need to make it easy. So one of our first secure dialogues was to build a secure dialogue for close account. And a poor innocent customer came into a secure dialogue and said, "What time does Lewisham branch close?" And the API immediately fired back, "Which account do you want to close?" And the customer replied, "What time does it close? You want to close your ISA." So, you know, you have to introduce disambiguation and bring CX and UX design into what appears to be a simple dialogue. And we've also got a very talented linguist who can also code, who sits in the core team. So having those skills are critical. But if you systemize it and you use machine learning type tools with enough volume, you can get some quite clear patterns in terms of what's coming through. But it never surprises me what people ask through a chatbot.
Anthony, the true test will be to test your chatbots on Tim's quotes.
Yeah. No,
hopefully it would say, "Sorry, I don't understand," and hand you across to a live agent. Hopefully. Yeah.
They need to be funkier, your chatbots. So Jeff, back to you. What obviously this virtual agents, bots, whatever you want to call them, it's a big part of this conversational messaging future. So again, how do you advise your clients on how they should approach that? You know, how they build one, who they go to build one, so on.
So we partner with the the bot development firms, right? So we're kind of integrate behind them generally. Now, I think, like I said, some of the things that we can start to do is to do intelligence outside of the bot where they couldn't build it in the bot, right? That's one aspect. But I can tell you for RCS, the bot is going to be that is the way that every brand's going to talk to and mobile end users. It's going to be the staple, as opposed to, say, like in A2P, SMS. You know, you can be communicating with a custom built application, business application that the enterprise has. But in RCS, it's going to be different. It's always going to be a bot that manages that rich media engagement with the end user. And there, I think we can help and play a key role in the industry, because those bots are going to have to be, every carrier, every mobile operator in the world has rules about what those bots over RCS should be able to do and what they shouldn't be doing. as well as every brand is going to have brand guidance about what can be done with the brand and what can't be done. And so one area that we're looking at, we're creating a bot vetting service because we sit with all those operators. We know all the operators. We can easily ingest the requirements for the brand into a user interface and a GUI that we can facilitate validation of that bot to all of those specs, and hopefully be a bit of a catalyst to introduce bots more and more, particularly on the RCS side. Okay, but it's always, generally we're not in the bot development business. We're going to help vet them and all that and play that role. But again, I think that the conversations with the bot development companies is evolving to where, hey, you don't need to build that intelligence on your side. Let us do that on our side. Test the channel, see if it works. If it worked, fine. If it didn't, fall back here. Make decisions about routing. Maybe give us more responsibility for figuring out the ideal channel to communicate to the customer, and you maintain that conversational integrity across the channels, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and Douglas, are you have your clients given any thought to bot discovery, how their customers discover the existence of their messaging options?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it tends to be relationship led. So there is your banker, let's say, and the way in which we're conceiving this is that processes right now which cost an arm and a leg for a bank, something like corporate action, for example, in private banking, or updating the covenants of your credit line with a corporate bank every 3 months. Hugely expensive, horrible processes for the bank and for the client. And that is where we're taking an expression of already a complex and improved process that is already owned by the bank, and we're turning it into a conversation with the clients. And so it's a bit more sophisticated. Some of these conversations might be as simple as, I want to change my address, and it gets picked up, and you get taken down an automated journey because we don't need an expensive banker to do this for you. And maybe it's 2 o'clock in the morning, but we still want to do it with integrity. And so that's really our world is expressing what banks already have, but giving them rails for the stuff which people are creating as well into the future.
And what about security and compliance? How do you? I mean, it's a big one, isn't it? But how do you handle those issues?
It's alpha and omega for the banks. When I got started on this journey, one of my co-founders, he said, "Douglas, I've just left Barclays, seen a lot of failed projects." I'm not insulting anyone here. And I got to tell you, before we build this product, there are 13 people whose job is to say no at Barclays. And you've got to build the product around all those different gatekeepers, and they're gatekeepers for a reason. But unless you build for all those people, you're in bad situation. And we're growing with our clients, so we now eliminate all malware from all attachments, even if they're coming through WhatsApp or WeChat. And we've integrated data leakage protection into the back end, so now we have real-time analysis of what's going out, and is that a document you can send or can't send, shouldn't use that word, don't, reputational risk. And it evolves and it evolves, and it's just so exciting to evolve with our clients as this now becomes, as Syniverse has been saying, the center of the client relationship.
Anthony, I want to come back to you. I want to come back to something that Jeff said earlier about omnichannel, starting with that sort of physical meets virtual thing where you go to a shop and they don't recognize your order because their systems aren't linked up in the back end. How do you see messaging working with the high street operation that, despite COVID, I'm sure you will continue to run?
Yeah, it needs to be orchestrated. So real-time orchestration. So we use one of the enterprise orchestration platforms. So we've got the CRM integrated, online bank, mobile, email. We're not quite there with push notifications yet. but the whole point is real time. You can see any conversation. Without that, you're always going to be struggling. It's again, a lot of it's not so much the tech. Once the tech's in place, it's the change management and the behaviours, with colleagues. People often, I think, sometimes try to overserve in the channel they're in, rather than making use of the information which is available at their fingertips. Yeah, we're not perfect, but we've got a good operating model. The tech is in place, so in theory, we have full communication management across most of the channels, real time. So we shouldn't be able to send you an interstitial on your mobile app which offers you a personal loan, and on the same day send you an arrears email. There's rules around that. One of the things you have to be very careful is how often you communicate as well. Otherwise, you lose your veracity or sort of penetration with customers by sending too many messages. So the message has to be personalized and relevant, which again is something we're improving all the time. And that's where we are using quite a lot of AI and machine learning in terms of what the click-throughs are, how successful it is, against micro customer segments.
So Matthias, Anthony just mentioned AI and machine learning. What impact do you see that having on the omnichannel messaging space in the next few years?
It's super important, right? So it's super important. The channels are what we call conversational channels, right? So if you go back again, then SMS was for a long time a pure broadcast. Then it started that also people enabled two-way SMS, so meaning the first customers responded, even the fun fact I just talked about. But especially when we now call it to the new conversational channels, right? So the RCS, the WhatsApp, the WeChats, and so on of this world, people are really trying to interact with the bot at the other end, right? And so the bot will need to become better and better over time. There are very, very, call it simplified bots available en masse right now on the market, right? They even just react to little keywords and so on, but they get more and more and more sophisticated. One interesting fact, what we learned during rollouts of chatbots is the people who are best equipped to train the bot or the bots are the people who have been so long sitting in the call centers, because they know exactly how persons ask the question, what they want with it, if they ask in a certain way, which article to guide them to, and so on. So meaning, I think there is also, some interesting dynamic and change coming into this whole contact center industry, because people who are right now picking up the phone are now the ones who train the bots, right? So a bot is just as good as you really train it, and it will be increasingly become better. It's important. It will get better and better, but you need to train these bots, right? And the best persons doing that perfectly are the guys sitting in the contact centers day in, day out.
I think it's a good example, Tim, would be one of the things that they've introduced for call centers is sentiment analysis and detection, right? So, they're I guess listening in on the call, and somehow through AI is detecting the sentiment of the customer and the temperature. And depending on the temperature of that customer, they may auto escalate it to a supervisor, something like that. I can see that type of intelligence being integrated now into the chatbots, into the omni-channel experience.
I'm assuming similarly they could detect the subject matter or the language or whatever and hand on to an agent that is best equipped to handle that.
That could be a simple example too.
Yeah. Anthony, is that sort of sentiment analysis something you're looking at in your systems?
Yeah, we do text and speech analytics in a more traditional sense, and we have based the content teams in the call centers. So yes, we probably do it on a slightly bigger scale. So we try and drive the content by data. But yes, fundamentally. Yeah, and testing, we do a reasonable amount of A/B testing just to try and see if there's any difference in terms of reaction. And that's very easy in a chatbot. It's much more difficult in a mobile app unless you've got the right software. But yeah, so we do use sentiment analysis, certainly.
What about the tone of the chatbots themselves? How do you imbue them with the brand values of Santander?
Carefully. Yeah, carefully. I saw one, this is not a Santander bot, but it was a very large UK PLC, and they're all sat around in a huddle, and the first chat came in, and the chat bot, the message came in saying, "Yo, dude," and that the chat bot had some kind of personalization in it and replied, "How are you hanging?" And it wasn't really what this PLC was looking for, and they're all quickly trying to turn off those settings. We aim for impersonal. It's conversation. It's not written. We're quite happy with the use of emojis and emotions and that kind of thing. We try and avoid what I'd call text speak, but the reaction from the customers isn't negative where that's the case. I've seen plenty of complaints about chat. Sometimes with a mismatched expectation about what we can do currently, but very rarely about the tone of voice or the style or wording. We've just given it an identity. We're very upfront about it being a robot, but obviously we're part of a 12-country group, so it's quite difficult trying to come to a common name which wasn't offensive in one language or another. So we ended up with what we were calling it in the UK anyway, which was handy, which is Ava. So sorry, I beg your pardon, Sandy. Ava is what we rejected. We called it Sandy.
Yeah, makes sense.
SANDI.
Yeah. Okay, so last question, one we've had from a viewer, which is, I'll come back to Jeff on this one. How long will we need SMS in this omni-channel future? Will there come a time when we shut down that text-only channel?
It's going to be a long, long time, because it reaches everywhere. It's ubiquitous in its coverage, right? So it's going to be around for a long time. I think that in the developed, I should probably say this, in the developed world, RCS will start to come, and RCS is powerful because it's native to the phone, right? As much as if I was an enterprise, I'd want them to 100% of my customers to adopt my app, but that's just not going to be the case, right? It's all about reach. And actually mobile end users are getting fatigued by too many apps, right? And if stuff showed up right in their native messaging and you could just always just asynchronously start a conversation again with that brand, that would be very convenient. And so I think it's going to be around for a long time because of reach. And over time, our RCS it's already hitting critical mass in markets like Mexico and Brazil. Probably 30-40% of the phones can be reached with a rich business messaging experience via RCS. Once the end users and once the enterprises experience how much better and efficient and what a better customer experience that is, that's going to push things over the critical mass. So SMS is going to turn into RCS, but SMS is going to be around for a long time.
Okay, and one final question, which I'm going to follow up with a very quick answer to this one because we're running over a little bit. Is there some kind of list or checklist that you advise brands to check before investing in a chatbot or talking to a chatbot specialist?
Who's that to?
Jeff, yeah. Still you, mate. Yeah.
I'm probably, I think, the Douglas and Anthony might be a better person to ask for that.
Okay, I'll leave the last word to you, Douglas. Have you thought about this?
Well, we don't have as many omni-channels as they have in Syniverse. I mean, that is truly an awesome diagram, which you shared at the beginning. Our world is rapidly evolving because you see this challenge of WhatsApp trying to mimic the incredible success of WeChat in China, still making mistakes. So, I mean, they do one step forward, two steps back. We're seeing trying to make it easier and easier for people to stay in WhatsApp and do as much as possible, while at the same time giving people a great experience powered by backend systems which are invisible to them. We're not really a bot company. We're a bot enabler, I guess is the right answer. So I'm not the right person to answer that.
All
I'll
right,
take
well,
a shot at it though, Tim. I mean,
yeah.
it's about channels, options, maintaining conversational integrity, the omni-channel experience, being able to introduce valuable AI and machine learning capabilities in it, and also have it be able to integrate with other applications that will help with the omni-channel conversation to make sure that you truly are covering every customer touch point that you have. Maybe some of those customer touch points aren't inherent in the bot. So,
okay.
yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that. We've run over a little bit, but that's because we're having so much fun. I'd like to thank Jeff, Matthias, Douglas, and Anthony for joining us. Great discussion, and for the rest of you out there, enjoy the rest of the virtual event. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.